episode of the Budding Watch Enthusiast. So about a year ago, I purchased the Straton Syncro from the Straton Watch Company. It's a watch that I've talked about on the podcast a whole bunch, a watch that I've enjoyed very much owning over the past year. And Kyle from Straton Watch Company was kind enough to send me out a couple prototypes of his current models that he has coming out here soon. The Straton Legera Standard and the Straton Legera Bullhead. Now, as of the posting of this video, both of these watches are available to pre-order on Kickstarter. So I will leave a link to the Kickstarter down below. There should be about 5 days left if you're watching this video on the day that I post it. So if you are interested in this, certainly check out the link and check it out on Kickstarter there. But let's get into the review of these watches. Now, both versions I have here are going to be the Mecha Quartz version of the Legera watches. There's also an option to get them in a automatic configuration with a Valjoux movement inside of it. The standard Legera here has a Seiko VK63 Mecha Quartz movement, or if you get the automatic version, it comes with a Valjoux 7753. The Bullhead here comes with a Seiko VK67 Mecha Quartz movement, or a Valjoux 7750. If we're looking at the size of these watches, the standard version here has a width of 44 millimeters, a lug-to-lug length of 50 millimeters, a height of 16 millimeters, and the strap width is 22 millimeters. For the Bullhead, slightly smaller dimensions here. You have a width of 42 millimeters on this watch. The lug length is 48 millimeters. You have a height of between 13 and 14 millimeters, depending on where on the watch you are measuring. If you get the automatic version, it's actually 16 millimeters height, and a strap width here as well of 22 millimeters. Now for the case on these, it is 316L stainless steel, a mostly brushed finish here with this chamfered edge that you see running down the side, a very nice highlight for some contrast on the case. The black version of the case is also stainless steel, but it does have a DLC coating to get the black coloration. On the side of the case, you have a signed screw-down crown with the flat pushers here for the chronograph. Of course, for the Bullhead version, the crown and pushers are going to be situated on top of the watch. If we flip it over, you get a screw-down caseback. Straton casebacks are always really cool and uniquely decorated with a racing motif. They're always a fun little visual piece of flair for these watches. And because you have a screw-down crown with these watches, you do get a little bit of extra water resistance, a 100-meter water resistance for both the standard and the Bullhead version of this watch. If we move on to the dial and bezel, you have a sapphire domed bezel here. With the 12-hour tracking markers. You also get a domed sapphire crystal here with a pretty heavy amount of distortion. Again, a pretty common feature that you see on the Straton watches. This bezel is unidirectional. It is 120 click. I will say that for the Bullhead version, there's almost no backplay on this at all. Whereas on the standard version, there's actually a tremendous amount of backplay. I would normally chalk that up to just being a variation because it's a prototype, but I will say that my Straton Syncro also does suffer from a bit of backplay as well, so I think it might just be just how the 44 millimeter version bezels are. But again, the Bullhead one is really tight, which is cool to see. If we zoom into the dial, we do have applied brushed hour indices that are set in front of this checkerboard style minute track. I'm actually going to get this a little bit closer so you guys can see the checkerboard track that runs on the outside of the watch for the minutes. Very cool. Again, what I would expect to see on this watch with the very obvious 70s racing chronograph inspiration. Very cool motif for the watch. You also see a chapter ring running along the inside of the watch that does have a tachometer register on it as well. Baton style hands that do have superluminova in them for the hour and minute hands, and you have this orange chronograph seconds hand that runs on the watch as well. Now, with the Mecha Quartz movement, one of the cool features that you get with this is you do get the instant snapback that you would normally see on a mechanical chronograph movement. So, of course, you can stop the chronograph by pressing the start-stop button again. If you reset the chronograph, the seconds hand and all the other hands on the registers will snap back to their neutral positions, and you can even do that if you just hit the reset button on the watch as well. So not a true flyback where it would normally start once again, but like I said, you do get that instant snapback, something you don't normally see on a quartz chronograph movement. It's one of the reasons I really like the Mega Quartz movement personally. Now, there's a 3-register layout on this watch, and the registers that you get are going to vary based on which model you have. So on the standard version of the Legera, you do have chronograph minutes here on the left, you have a running seconds hand here in the center, and you have a 24-hour time indicator here on the right. If we move over to the Bullhead quartz, instead, you have the 60-minute chronograph counter on the left-hand side here. You have the 12-hour chronograph hour counter in the middle, and you have the running seconds hand for the watch on the right. The difference between the two here is the standard Legera actually has a 60-minute chronograph, whereas the Bullhead version is actually a 12-hour chronograph. Now, if you get the automatic version with the Valjoux, then you'll get registers that have a running seconds hand, a 30-minute chronograph subdial, and a 12-hour chronograph subdial as well. The Valjoux versions also have a 12-hour chronograph. Now, black and gray are just two of the colors that are available for the Straton Legera. There's actually a total of 7 different colorways available for this watch, which is a kind of crazy amount to think about. So I'll put a picture in here so you guys can see all the different ones that are available. Definitely a lot of choices and a lot of options to match your style. Now, every Straton Legera is going to come on a leather racing strap in a complementary color for the watch. I will say I've had a leather strap for my Syncro as well. I really actually like the leather strap that it comes with. There's also an option to get a steel bracelet for these as well. It costs a little bit more, but if you prefer to have it on a bracelet, that option is there for you also. And here's what the Straton Legera Standard looks like on my 8-inch wrist. Again, this is the 44mm wide version of the watch. And here's the Straton Bullhead on my 8-inch wrist. Again, this is one that has a 42mm width. And this one's interesting because, like I said, even though it's not as tall as the standard version, it has the illusion of being taller just because of the angled way that it does sit on your wrist, since the top of the case is a little bit higher up than the bottom. Now, one of the reasons that I wanted to bring out the Syncro is also just to highlight some of the similarities and differences between the watches, but I was actually really pleasantly surprised to find that it wasn't quite an apples-to-apples comparison. I really looked at the Legera when I first saw it, when it was first announced several months ago, as kind of like a more refined version of the Syncro, which had come out in the year or so before. But when you actually compare the two watches, they're actually quite different. The Syncro was envisioned as a kind of hybrid chronograph and dive watch, which is why you see the 60-minute timing bezel, which is why you get a little bit more luminova with the Syncro. And I'll actually throw in a lume shot of the Legeras here, so you guys can see that. Of course, not as much lume. It's applied really well, but you don't get nearly as much, because again, the Syncro is a dive watch, whereas the Legera is just a straight-up chronograph. But you also see a lot of similarities. Obviously, very heavily into the racing aesthetic. That's kind of what Straton Watch Company does. So it's cool to see that that same design kind of being transferred over. Of course, you get the checkerboard pattern here on the bezel, whereas on the Legera, it's going to be here on the minute track. And, of course, there's also other similarities as well. Just the way the case is designed is incredibly similar. And actually, we should probably be looking at the standard version, comparing it to the Syncro, because they're the ones that are going to be more closely aligned. But yeah, like I said, the Legera, just a bit more of a traditional style chronograph layout. Now, I will say, from the quality standpoint, it is exactly what I have come to expect from Straton Watch Company. Like I said, I've had the Syncro for about a year. This is just a really solid, really quality watch from a micro brand that sort of flies under the radar a little bit. I don't hear a lot of discussion in forums with Straton Watch Company, and that's a shame. And that's part of the reasons probably why because they have a very specific aesthetic, a very specific style that they're going for, and that's not going to mesh well with every watch owner. But like I said, they make a really good product. You see some things that you don't normally see. Again, the way the Dome Sapphire is designed to kind of mimic acrylic crystals from the 70s, and having the very obvious racing inspired aesthetic on the watch. It's just really cool, and it's cool to see that Kyle continues to lean into that even with his new offerings that he has coming here. I'm also super thrilled to see the 12-hour bezel. Obviously, again, the Syncro had the 60-minute bezel because it was supposed to be a hybrid dive watch as well. But I think the 12-hour bezel is just a lot more appropriate for this style of watch. So the biggest thing, though, I'm really stoked that they decided to do a 42mm version. I think 42mm is just the perfect size. It's actually kind of a shame that they only are doing it with the Bullhead, because the Bullhead is going to be a little bit more, I think, of the polarizing option, because it's a very, very polarizing style of watch. But I think 42mm is a fantastic size. It's a small enough size that it doesn't overwhelm your wrist, but it's big enough that it gives the dial room to breathe. It lets everything exist on the dial without feeling cramped. So I'm really, really pleased that he decided to go with the 42mm option for this watch. Now, there's a couple issues I do have with the watch, and most of them are centered around the legibility of the watch. So I mentioned that there is the tachometer chapter ring, but look how high and look how steep that chapter ring sits on there. It actually makes it really difficult to read the tachometer register on the watch. Again, on the Syncro, it's a flat. It's actually the outer part of the chapter ring where you normally see the minute track on this watch. So it's a little bit easier to read. On this one, like I said, the fact that it's pitched really high does not make it easy. And the other legibility issue boils down to this minute track. Now, while it's really cool, and I really appreciate the fact that they are leaning into the racing inspiration for this watch, it can also make it a little bit tricky to read, especially if I pull up the standard version here. You almost really can't see the bottom part of the hash marks on the offset part. So, like, you can see the ones that are here in the orange, and you can, I guess, easily see the minutes easily enough, but you can't really see the bottom half, even though it is on there. And like I said, I'm trying to angle it so that the light catches it. You can probably mildly see it in there a little bit. Yeah, black on black probably wasn't a good idea for that. And I appreciate what they were going for, but it does make it a little tricky to read at a glance, just because it looks a little muddled. And especially on the darker colors, it's going to be even harder. That being said, though, I think both of these watches are a definite home run here from Straton Watch Company. Obviously, if you couldn't tell, I certainly prefer the Bullhead out of the two of them. It's a style you don't see a whole lot anymore, so it's definitely going to be more unique to anything that you have in your collection. You get the better chronograph, you get the 12-hour chronograph as compared to the 60-minute chronograph, and you also get the better size of the watch in 42mm instead of the 44mm. I would have loved to have checked out the automatic versions that have the Valjoux in them as well, but I gotta tell you, it's really hard not to recommend the Mecha Quartz version regardless. Again, I love the Mecha Quartz movement. I love that it gives you the feel of the automatic movement without necessarily the price of the automatic movement. And plus, you also get the accuracy of having the quartz watch as well. But again, look at the smooth second hand sweep on the chronograph there. If you didn't have the running seconds hand ticking away in the background, you might not even realize that this is a quartz watch. So again, someone that's owned a Mecha Quartz watch now for a year, I just really enjoy it. And with the money that you save over, the automatic version, it's hard to just not say, hey, get the Mecha Quartz version regardless. And again, both of these watches are currently available on Kickstarter for a couple of days as I post this. So it's really hard not to recommend them, especially, coming in at around a 30% discount. But I will say I would still recommend this watch even at full price. I mean, that's what I paid for my Straton Syncro, and again, I've really enjoyed owning it over this past year. Again, it's a great value. You're getting a well-built watch with an aesthetic that just isn't seen on a lot of modern watches, even in the micro-brand space anymore. And if it's an aesthetic that you like as much as I do, and I don't think you'll be disappointed. And so that's going to end my review here of the Straton Legera series from Straton Watch Company. Again, thank you to Kyle from Straton for lending these into the channel and letting me check them out in advance of the release of the watch. If you guys found this video informative or enjoyable, do me a favor and hit the like button down below. If you're new to the channel, thank you very much for checking it out. And you can click the red subscribe button and ring the bell icon so that you never miss a new episode that I post. And of course, I'm also on Instagram. If you'd like to follow me there, just search out @buddingwatchenthusiast. Thanks again, guys, for watching, and I will see you all the next time.